Good afternoon. Today is the 10th of November, and as promised a couple of days ago, it is time to answer some viewer questions. We haven't done this for quite a long time now. I know we've had a couple of live streams, but I find it a bit easier to control if actually it's not recorded live. I'm sure you appreciate. So without further ado, we've had a number of questions actually, so I suppose you better get on with it. I hope I pronounce everybody's names correctly, although I don't know how many of these names are actually related to what your real names are, but that's the beauty of the internet. You can be anonymous if you want to. So someone who definitely isn't under their real name, Sir Mr. David Waters from Scottish Car Enthusiasts and Trainers TV. This is a very interesting question. I've not been asked this for some time, actually. My question, Sarah, is what made you become someone with a YouTube channel? Was it like myself after watching someone else with a YouTube channel from Wales, thinking I could do that and see how it goes? Yes and no. I think Ian Seabrook was instrumental in sort of showing that you didn't have to be exactly kind of lantern jawed leading man material to be able to run a YouTube channel, and you know, that does sort of help those of us who aren't, which to be honest is most of the population. We can't all look like Daniel Craig, so it was helpful in that way. This is, you know, way before twin cam and iDriver Classic and things like that. There were fewer, I would say, sort of speciality channels out there when I started in September 2018. But really what it was I wanted an advertising stream for my business. And you know, I'm sure most of you do know that actually I do have a business where I find cars for private clients, and I wanted to have a channel in that way. And I think the ultimate example of that is probably Car Wow, where, you know, Matt Watson was taken from, or rather I think he just left, Car Buyer, which has become a far less relevant channel in recent years, but he started there in 2010. And it's been very successful for them. I think they've got something like 4 or 5 million subscribers. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, British automotive YouTube channel out there. And it's a company rather than individual. I know Shmee 150 is quite big, but I never thought really we'd take off to that sort of standard, because we don't have a sort of professional crew behind us most of the time. I remember Mr. Franks and the other people who helped me film Mr. Bill and Mr. Richardson's Viewers Driving. They're very good, but we don't use them a lot because we have to conserve budget. This is a business, and so I can't keep spending hundreds of pounds, you know, every time I make True Jacket reviews. It's just not really possible. But when the channel started, I thought that's what it was going to be, and it was only going to be that originally, and I thought it was worth spending a bit on that to sort of get things going. The growth of the channel back in the sort of early days was very slow, like most small channels are. And so we had to sort of think about, can we actually do other videos which aren't as good? And of course, there are many videos which are not as good as an episode of True Jacket Reviews on this channel. So yes, I mean, there was a degree of influence from Ian Seabrook, but that's not the whole picture. Right, Frederick Roth III from the United States of America asks, have you reviewed either the Saab 9.3 or Saab 9.5? Well, yes, we've done 2 Saab 9.3 reviews. One was the original generation 9.3. I think the one we filmed was a 99. That's on No Budget Reviews. And so is a convertible that was the second generation one, which is one based on the Vauxhall Vectra C platform. That was actually owned by a friend of mine, the 9.3 convertible second generation, and that was a very popular review. I quite like that car, actually. I don't think I'd have the convertible particularly. I'd probably go for either the saloon or the I can't remember what they called it, the estate version of that. I've had so many funny names for estates back in the 2000s. But yes, it's a pretty good car actually, and you can still buy them, or you used to be able to buy decent Saab 9.3 convertibles for under £1,000 before all the prices went crazy. Now it's more like £3,000, but they're honestly pretty good cars. 9.5 I haven't done. I'd like to do one. And then, of course, he talks about the Suzuki Kisashi and the Chevrolet Aveo or Sonic. Both, obviously, cars I'd like to feature on my channel at some point. Stuart Saunders asks, I'd like to see you find a Sao Panzer, Yugo Sano, Matra Rancho, FSO Polonaise, or a Lada, maybe a Samara. I'm not a massive fan of Ladas, to be honest. I don't really like them. I don't know why, but I'd much prefer to do an FSO. I know they're very similar, but something about it, probably my Polish heritage on my grandfather's side, makes me want to drive Polish cars over other ones. Yugo Sano, those are... I think we know one of the only people who's got one in the country is Mr. Seabrook. Sao Panzer, I do know of one, although the chap who owns it, and he has quite a collection of interesting cars, he doesn't really want any of them to be filmed, which is absolutely fine. I mean, you know, it's perfectly fine, you know, what people want to do with their own cars. I mean, who are we to say what they do? And I completely respect and understand that. Matra Rancho, I might have a lead to do a Matra Rancho at some point. Ladas, no, not really me, particularly because I know they're very heavy to drive, and I don't really like cars with really heavy steering. Very interesting question from Colin Hicks, who's had several cars featured on the channel. Good insert time of day here, sir. That's an interesting way to start. Do you think UK second-hand car price will maintain the current levels? I know I'm not in agreement with a certain other chap who is in the industry and makes videos about this, but I'm not sure they're going to soften in the next couple of months. I think they probably will stay a bit high because these supply issues are going on, and we can see that in the new car sales figures. I don't know how long it will be. I'm not going to speculate, but from the evidence I've seen myself, I think they will remain high for a bit. Now, it's very bad news for me because it means I get many fewer clients because the prices are too high for a lot of them who aren't necessarily, you know, changing a fairly new car for a new one. They're changing a really, really old car for a new one, so they can't really afford to make that jump. They don't want to have to fix their old car and keep it. That's what's happening. Or the people who want to buy a car when they don't have one, and that also is a problem. So it's not very good news for me particularly. I'm sure some people are making a profit out of it, not even necessarily the dealers, because the auction prices that exist. I mean, if you watch, I don't know, a Chop's Garage or something like that, that will tell you a bit more about this. But the auction prices of cars are ridiculously high. And so that means that the dealer sticker prices are very high. So I don't know who's really making massive amount of money here. Maybe the auction companies, the people who put them in the auction. So no, not so much people on this end. But he also says, this is interesting, is the cause for lack of new cars sold in 2020 less filter into the used market? Well, it might be, but more than that is people just holding on to the cars. They're just holding on to them. I mean, I was speaking to Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, earlier on today about my mother's car, because you know, I've taken over to Simon at Langley Prestige, who you know, you would have seen supply quite a lot of cars to the channel, including like Saab 9.3, and he was sort of saying this is the sort of thing I'd really like to sell, and I was thinking, I bet you would, but it's not for sale at the moment, so we're going to have to not do anything about it, which is a shame because it's worth a fair amount of money. There's not really much of a depreciation drop for that since my mother and I bought that car in 2017. It's extraordinary to think about that now. But actually, buying brand new can be quite good. If you buy a Dacia Sandero, the something like the second-hand car price is £2,000 over the new price. It's insane. And he says, I still see a new car similar price levels to last year. The Corolla's offered at 0% finance and £3,000 off the list price, which makes the monthly payments less than for a used one. Yeah, if you don't mind waiting a little time for your new car, that might be a really good option. Mr. Adam Toms, who has recently supplied a couple of very nice cars for channel, says, your wish list is wonderful. It's a shame I don't have my Chevrolet Aveo, as I'd be able to help you cross it off a list. Yes, I don't really mind which generation of there is. There were two of them. The most recent one was discontinued in America in 2020, although it's called the Sonic over there. The older one, though, is probably more appealing to most of you because it's very easy to find one of those for no budget reviews money, even now. So, you know, hopefully I can get hold of one of those. Andrew Jenner says, are you optimistic about British car industry post-Brexit? Can you feature some rat rods and bespoke one-off cars? I don't know how I feel about the British car industry at the moment. It's very difficult for me to say. I've always been kind of unsure about Brexit. I mean, there are some very good things about it, and there are some not so good things about it. I think we made possibly the right decision when we took the vote, and you know that's controversial to say something like that. But we have had to deal with a lot of negative consequences of it. There are some positive ones, but I think I'm still sort of a little bit kind of sort of on the fence about how quick the recovery will be. But there will be a recovery. There's no doubt about it. It will happen. But I don't know how quickly it will be. I'm afraid rat rods and bespoke one-off cars are probably not the kind of thing that we have on the channel, I'm afraid, much as I'm sure some of you like to see them. Gary Moore says, I drive a Land Rover Freelander 1 TD4 facelift, which I'm afraid can't talk about on the channel. Fortunately, he continues. I'd like you to see a review of the petrol V6 version. That would be the KV6 engine 2.5 litre. Yes, if I can actually find one of those, then absolutely. It's just I've never been offered a Freelander. I have driven one, but it was a 1.8K series some years ago, way before I was actually operating in my current status. So, yeah, certainly. It's like everything else. I mean, you know, it's whether or not I get offered one, pretty much, for most of the cars that you suggest. I might have already been offered one, which is why I can say, or if it's a brand new MG, I can, well, unless it's absolutely like the model's been out, you know, the last like couple of months, which is more difficult. But generally, most of the MGs I'm very blessed to actually be able to get hold of review. In fact, I've done most of them already. But a lot of cars, it just depends if somebody offers me them. Roy Gardner writes, what's your favourite English sports car? Oh, it's a very difficult question. A very good friend of mine died tragically in 1970. Very soon after buying a Sunbeam Alpine. That sounds horrible. He was very knowledgeable about cars and motorbikes, and I wasn't. I imagine the Alpine would be the older type. There was a later type of Alpine that was similar to the newer Arrow Rapier, but I presume he's talking about the older one that was discontinued in 1967. Consequently, I can only think about the Alp, as he called it. It was probably an excellent motor. So from nostalgia, I always take an interest in when the Sunbeam Alpine is written or spoken about. I don't know, I quite like Triumphs. I'm quite fond of them. Don't know what the best one would be. I suppose I'd like to try a TR6, really. The Stag I also quite like, but they are such common cars at shows that it's just a bit difficult sometimes to make a review something like that stand out a bit. I'd certainly like to drive one. I think that'd be brilliant. But maybe a TR6 more than that. Actually, that has, I think, some of the best resolve styling. I know it's an evolution of this whole TR series of Triumphs, which dates back to the 1950s. But I just like the styling of it. I think they did the right thing in updating that shape from the Michelotti design to the Carmen design. Yeah, I think probably one of those. Mr. Lewis Macklin from Macklin Motors asks, have you reviewed many newer Chryslers yet? The Sebring Saloon has caught my eye for some strange reason. I have actually driven a Sebring. I've driven one in 2009. It was a courtesy car with a 6-speed gearbox with a forbidden fuel Volkswagen engine. I think most of them were like that back in the day because that was popular. The interior quality of those is absolutely terrible. In the Chrysler Delta review that I did in 2019, I referred to the Sebring as having the interior quality of a little tray from a pack of Boaster biscuits, and that's not changed at all. The interior quality of the later Chryslers, things like the Voyager and stuff like that, was not good. The Upsilon, or rather the Lancia Upsilon, because it's really a Lancia rather than a Chrysler, is still on sale. It's still on sale in Italy. And I hear Lancia is supposedly coming back as a brand, which would be nice. Yes, I mean, I'd like to try some more. I mean, even if I could hold of a Sebring or its sister car Dodge Avenger, they're very similar. But yeah, I mean, they're not very common cars. The Chrysler Delta itself was only sold, I think, for 18 months, maybe 2 years, and they sold under 900 of them in this country. We just weren't really interested in them at all, which is why when I got hold of the one for review, a friend of mine had one. I think she still got it, actually. I was really happy to be able to film it. It's one of these sort of early style Tweed Jacket reviews. John Edwards writes, I've seen an awful lot of Lassetti estates for under 1,000 or even 500. Very cheap, and space of bodies in the boot is a certain channel might reference. Yes, we know what channel that is, sir. The tax is very steep. Well, tax is very steep as well on this Rover 45 V6, so no difference there, really. Mr. Sean Cook says, oh, this is really long. Basically, he refers to lots of the sort of wish list I put up. Talks about 460s, 850s, Rover 800 Sterling, or just Rover Sterling, Maxi 2s, just that kind of stuff. But there's a second question down here which says, from the late 90s or early 2000s, which Japanese saloon would you choose as a companion for the Rover 45 V6? Nissan QX, Lexus IS200, Mazda ZL6, Mitsubishi Galant V6, Honda Legend, Subaru Legacy, Suzuki Vitara V6. Well, we can't really do the Vitara because that is not a saloon, and they like to rust those. I mean, lots of these cars on this list like to rust. This is a very difficult choice. The three that stand out to me most are Nissan QX, the Honda Legend, and the Mazda ZL6. I don't know if I can really choose between those. They all have their different strengths and weaknesses. I think the ZL6 is a nicer design, and I used to own a car that was based on that platform because the mid-90s Mazda 323F was based on the ZL6 platform. That's why you could get the V6 version of it. Obviously, you know, I don't really know. I like all of those. The Honda Legend's fantastic too. I mean, any generation of Honda Legend is fantastic. So, I'm afraid I can't choose between those three. Dean Unknown says, a picture of a Suzuki Hisashi you can never get parts for. Well, I think we've explained comprehensively in the last video why I want to get hold of one of those. I don't want to buy one necessarily, I just want to drive one. That's probably an easier task than actually having to fork out £4,000 to £5,000 for one just for review. This isn't High Peak Autos. I can't just go out and buy a car just because I want to make one video on it. That doesn't work like that on this channel, I'm afraid. Matt, who's Hyundai, I tend you would have seen on my channel recently, says this. This is actually a really, really good question. How about a Kia Mentor or a Shuma 2? Yes, that is a car I would like to film. I almost bought one in about 2012. It was really cheap. I think it was £850 or something, but I don't know. I quite like them. They're Mazda based. I think there's some 323 engineering in there. They do rust, and there are some unique parts in them which are hard to get hold of. They're a bit, as Mr. Coleman puts them, exotic. So yeah, probably don't want to buy one to keep, but again, I'd like to drive one, certainly. Jonathan Bramble asks, this is, you know, it's effectively a question. Why don't you have a business card made up so when you do your shamble, if you've got a car, should leave under wipe and say you'd like to review the car and put them to the channel. I'm not really a fan of imposing on somebody's privacy by kind of advertising stuff like that under sort of wipers and things. I don't really like doing that. I'd much rather somebody sort of have a look at the video after the show and then get in touch with me so I can read their car. It's happened a lot of times actually, sort of like that. And so what I might do is when we start going to the NEC show, which will be Friday, that's where we'll start, then I'll make sure I put my email address in the videos that I edit in inverted commas, because they aren't particularly edited, they're just sort of thrown together in a stupid way. So yeah, I'd much prefer to do something like that. I'm not really there to kind of advertise myself too much, if that makes sense. The Lizzie man has suggested a number of cars. Ford Car Plus, yeah, that's definitely sensible second-hand review eligible. I hope so in a moment unless prices go up anyhow. Sit up and beg Ford from the 50s. I don't like driving cars that give me really bad backache, and unfortunately it's quite a few of them. That's sadly any R3 Rover 200, 25 or ZR, or even the Streetwisers like that. There's a lot of others as well. The Mini was really bad as well. The original Mini. The R50 was a lot better. Reliant Robin, Chevette. I'm not really a big fan of three-wheelers. Vauxhall Chevette, yeah, I'd love to drive a Chevette. I know people have done those on YouTube. My memory of them is that the parents of my old childminder used to have a very late Chevette. I think it was an X or a Y plate, so about 82. And it was the post-facelift one with flush headlamps. We sometimes was travelling that. It was interesting. I mean, I'd have a go at one of those. Again, it depends if someone wants to offer me one. But certainly, yeah. Regular viewer, Mr. Alan Simpson asks, why do you think small estates are getting harder to find? He kind of also explains that the Clio, the 207, we don't like the 207 on this channel, I'm afraid. It's not good. Very early episode True Jacket reviews on my 207. Yeah. Anyway, Seata Beefer, that's actually coming up tomorrow. We've got a Seata Beefer of that generation coming up. It's not the ST version, no, it's a standard one, but they all used to be available as estates of Dacia used to offer the Logan MCV. They did. We might have a Logan MCV coming up at some stage, so I do know a viewer who's got one of those. Skoda have confirmed the estate version of the new Fabia. Well, no, they haven't. They've confirmed they're getting rid of it. They're not going to make a new version of the Fabia, and the reason for this, so you ask questions, is one, people aren't buying them, and two, the manufacturers want to build more profitable cars. Now, things like the Fabia and the Polo, they're not very profitable. Neither is the Up and the Me and the Citigo. That's why they're gradually disappearing. They'd much rather you buy, I don't know, a T-Cross or a Kamiq or something like that, or just go up one level and buy an Octavia. It's a shame because it is a very appealing type of car. I mean, one of the first True Jacket Reviews episodes we had, in fact, the very first Christmas special 3 years ago, was a Fabia estate that Mr. Franks owns. So I think they're brilliant cars. It's just they're not fashionable anymore, which is a shame because a lot of people like that kind of thing. Rather like the Vauxhall Marie that we had in Sensible Secondhand Reviews yesterday. That is a niche that doesn't really exist anymore. Apart from, I think, the Mercedes B-Class is the last one. But a lot of people like that sort of car because they're very practical and they don't look like they're trying to cross the Serengeti for no reason. So yes, it's interesting. For those of you who are relatively new to the channel, Trabelli, who's a long-standing viewer of mine, always used to ask me ridiculous questions about secret agent missions. I think we started in the mid-60s and went through to the 1990s. But we've got another challenge here. if you were going from Dover to Land's End, and then from Land's End to John O'Groats, and then John O'Groats back to Eastleigh, with overnight stays at each checkpoint, I think we'd probably need quite a few overnight stays. So if it was me, which one car would you choose from the furious driving, hub nut, rubbish mechanic fleet? There is a large prize of £20,000 to be won if you don't break down. Which car would you choose from all the no budget reviews you've done for the same task? P.S. Your services as a secret agent are no longer required as you've been off the job too long. I have indeed been off a job for quite a long time. The furious driving fleet, there's no question, and actually this answers the second part of the thing, which is, well, it's the Volvo 740. Yeah, Volvo 740 from that was fantastic car, and you know they're actually quite reliable. The old red block engine in those is really good. I mean, I think Mr. Coleman, who races a lot of cars with red block engines, so you can not really blow one of those up. It's not really possible. So it just sort of tells you how reliable they are. With Ian Seabrook's stuff, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I think probably the most reliable one is the it's a Ford Fairmont AU Betty. For me, in terms of the comfort, the engine of it in that I think is quite reliable. Generally, there's a few things to do on it, but I think it's not too bad. Rubbish mechanic fleet. The one I would have chosen before would probably have been the Volvo 960 that we covered in True Jacket Reviews in 2019. But however, he doesn't own that anymore. Unfortunately, it got written off after he sold it, which is a massive shame because that's a lovely car, that Volvo. So the Alpha 166 that he's got, the twin spark, that would probably do the job. And for more than no budget reviews, if I didn't choose a Volvo 740, the Jaguar X-Type I think would probably be okay. The one that I filmed that belonged to Rob, which is a very early episode of No Budget Reviews. I think it was episode 3 or something. It was a lower spec one, but it was a 2-litre auto, and yeah, it seemed like a pretty nice, comfortable car to do a journey like that. I think the engine in it it's basically a Ford Duratec V6. I think they're reasonably reliable. Yeah, I think that's it really. So there we go. I think that that's all the questions. There were a couple of other replies to other channels sort of on here, but you know, that's not the sort of main questions. Maybe we'll do another one of these next month or something like that if you enjoy this sort of thing. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more entertainment, to like this video and leave a comment below. I hope you've enjoyed this incredibly self-indulgent video. It does really help if you click notifications as well, so that people get informed of new uploads. Yes, that all helps the algorithm be very happy. Thank you ever so much indeed once again.